I was a very good undergraduate student in a very flat place indeed, Cambridge, England. I got corrupted by climbing once I was a grad student at MIT.
Or what does it feel like to be a Scottish climber?
In that sense, I'm a fraud. I've very rarely climbed in Scotland. I haven't lived in Scotland since 1984. So I'm a Scotsman and a climber, but I'm not really a Scottish climber. Every time I go home, it's to see family. It's not to go freeze my butt off below some crag that's out of condition. Or
Do you identify yourself more as a physicist or as a climber?
as a physicist, climbing is fun. Climbing is my hobby, and I don't ever want it to be anything else because I think it would stop being fun if that happened.
Mm-hmm. Is physics fun?
Yeah, I like it. I like getting to the bottom of things, and to some extent, I do the same kind of physics as climbing. Right, the main thing for me is that you don't know the answer when you start. I'm not. I mean, I follow other people's routes, and they're fun, but ultimately, if I'm going to go on vacation for a month, I want to be solving a new problem. That's what I'm doing in research as well. I'm going beyond the frontiers of what we know. You take a little bit of what you know in one direction, you take a little bit of what you know in a different direction, you try to add them together, you get something you don't know. And climbing is kind of the same. We apply what we know, which is how to belay, how to navigate, how to read the mountain conditions, and we solve something we don't know. Chris Warner summed it up by saying, Bruce is the guy who's climbed all the peaks you've never heard of. I'm quite happy to be the guy who's climbed a lot of peaks you've never heard of. I like exploding things, but I don't particularly want to bring out my trumpet afterwards and say, look what I just did. It was so cool.
Are you a balanced individual?
There's this great quote that we've bandied around a bit from Don Bowie saying, the only time I know moderation is when I pass it on my way from one extreme to the other. But if you average over any given day, I don't think it's very balanced at all. It's either 16 hours in the office or 24 hours on the climbing job. Okay.
You've lived in China for how many years?
5.
Why you choose to live in China from the climbing standpoint, and what it is you hope to create here or instill in the Chinese climbing community?
Yeah, this is. You're going to get a jaded answer to this one. When I came to China, I was very optimistic about building something in physics research, and I was quite optimistic about building something in climbing. Why should I be optimistic about climbing? Because things were getting more open. It was getting easier to get to these mountains without paying $100,000 for a mega expedition. There were some enthusiastic young Chinese climbers, especially Yan Dongdong, guys who spoke good English, guys who wanted to get to know the global community and to get the global community to know China as well. In research, I was also quite optimistic that, lots of money, lots of talent, lots of drive to go forward and grow the enterprise of doing research. Why are you going to get a jaded answer? Because it really hasn't panned out, right? In physics, people are really not that concerned about new ideas. They're concerned about following fashion and getting papers published. In climbing, it's been a little bit the same. People are not so concerned about getting out and having an experience. They're concerned about having something to talk about. They're concerned about being the best. They're concerned about making money. They're concerned about doing the absolute minimum to get the maximum. After 5 years, there is no real community of Chinese climbers who are going into the mountains at all. The maximum they will do is grab their drill and go and bolt a new route up a sport crag. People don't really want to climb trad. People don't want to walk more than 10 minutes to get to a crag. People really are not that stoked about the whole work aspect of climbing mountains. They don't regard it as an experience. They want to be able to just say afterwards that they have it or did it. And so the idea of growing an active community in China an active alpine community has sort of fallen flat. People are just not that interested in doing it. And one of the biggest things that caused a change of view for me was that Yan Dongdong was killed. People do not really appreciate that alpinism is about experience. They want to watch the video while drinking beer and eating peanuts, and then they feel like they know it. 2 guys were killed 2 months ago, falling off Sigunyang. They just climbed out on the south face. Their experience base was the gym in Shanghai, and a little bit of bolting in Yangshuo, the famous sport area, and that was it. And so I'm not the only foreigner here with some climbing experience who's now pretty jaded as to the idea of really building a Chinese alpine community. It's going to remain very small, very balkanized, one or two guys going out and pushing an envelope in one small direction. So I think, expats are always warned: do not expect that you will change China, right? China is way too big, mindsets are way too entrenched. You, as an individual with some small part of your lifetime, are not going to make a huge difference. And I've definitely discovered that in both physics and climbing. And I mean, actually, my experience of climbing as a whole, you asked me about when I started. When I started, I thought it was cool. I was always happy to tell somebody, yeah, climbing's cool. Look what we were doing. You want to come with us? And after a while, I got a little bit jaded with that. It started when people started dying and people started showing that they're not that keen. It's like, okay, I'm not going to push my enthusiasm down your throat. And it's the same here. If people don't want to know in China about research or about climbing, then it's not my job to push it down their throat. So I won't be doing that, and I'm not doing that anymore. It's become very clear during my time in China that we're in a phase where repression is getting much greater. Especially the new regime is not interested in giving anybody any sort of freedom to do anything, and so there's no point in trying to get at this point. There's no really. If you try to get paperwork to do something, you will only end up costing yourself a lot of money and closing yourself down, because somebody along the chain of bureaucracy will decide that this is no good. As you saw on this trip, Kyle, your safety is paramount. The way they can ensure your safety is not letting you off the highway. And this is the thinking that dominates practically every village, every organization, every set of people who may be somewhere along that chain of command that gives you the permit you want. And so easily the best way to get things done in China, and this is how Chinese people work as well, is don't ask about the rules. Just try to see how far you can slide along without somebody getting in your way. The sooner you ask about the rules, the more likely you are to draw attention to yourself and get shut down. I don't have any illusions that I'm making a protest statement against the system. I'm just trying to be a climber doing things the Western way in a very non-Western country, and hopefully not getting noticed.
So is the climbing system in China going to change? How does it change? Does it need to change?
Okay, if you're the communist government, it doesn't need to change. Climbing should stop. There's nothing good in climbing. Climbing gets people killed. It might give them seditious individual thinking ideas. There's no point in climbing at all. Climbing is purely a mechanism for making money by charging foreigners large amounts of money for going up the peaks that happen to line the borders of China. So in that sense, the only growth in climbing in China is if there are Olympic gold medals at stake.
Oh boy.
And yeah, that's exactly the way they look at it. There is no such thing as climbing for getting disadvantaged youth out of the inner city and causing people to appreciate nature. There's zero appreciation for that here, and that will not change. And the only thing that will change here is if the current government system collapses, and that's not looking too likely in the near future. I'm pretty much done with climbing mountains in Sichuan, Yunnan, Qinghai, Gansu. The only places worth climbing in are Tibet and Xinjiang. That's where there are big mountains with lots of possibilities for new peaks and new lines. And these places are extremely hard to do business in right now.
Where in the world do you see yourself focusing on in the next 5 years for climbing objectives?
Climbing-wise, I'm still most interested in the Karakoram, Pakistan, and I would like to start exploring the Indian side, which I've not looked into yet in my climbing life. I may take a summer off and go to Peru.
There we go. Cool. I think that's it.
Thank you.
That's all I got. Thank you.